We met with we met with youth who are part of programs to help youth at risk through mentorship and other opportunities. We met with community members from Kibbutz Nachal Oz, which was devastated on October 7th, and which we have joined with for the next 2 years through a program through the Jewish Agency called Communities Together, to hear about their rebuilding efforts and the work and resiliency that they've provided in mental health and mental well-being for teens through the funding that we've provided. We are delighted today to be joined by Becky Caspi. Becky is the director of the Israel Office for Jewish Federations of North America, as well as the senior VP for Israel and Overseas. She is our partner on the ground. And before I turn it over to Becky, I also want to recognize the great Eliad Eliyahu, who is our Jewish Federation representative and partnership manager in Yokneam, Megiddo. And together, Becky and Eliad are part of a system that ensures that all of our investments in Israel are stewarded to the right place and having the correct impact. And we're delighted to have both of them with us this morning. And I will turn it over to Becky, who's going to share a bit about the impact and the ongoing need.
Thank you, Rich. Good morning. I guess we can start the show. Boker Tov, everyone. Thank you so much for starting the day together. It's day 523. And I want to thank you, Rich and Eliad, for inviting me and the whole team in Atlanta. It is a big honor to be here together with you. And I have to say, it's kind of fun to see so many good friends on screen. My brief update on how Federation has responded to the war. Sorry, just 1 second. Can you see me okay? Just making sure. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
You can see the slides. My brief update. My brief is to update on how Federation has responded to the war in Israel and share a bit about the needs that we're seeing now. So let's get started. Next slide, please. First, I wanted to give a sense of the scope of what has happened. And we have to start with the day our worst nightmares came true and look at everything that has taken place since then. Just take a look at these statistics. The bottom line is that every single person has been impacted. Of course, some more than others, but all of us since then and until now. Early on October 7th, even amidst the chaos, it was clear that we were in an unprecedented moment. So we started to rev the response engines for Federation, because whenever or wherever there is a Jew in need, and especially in Israel, we are there. This is Federation's promise. We could fulfill that promise on October 7th because we were there on October 6th. Eric Fingerhut, my boss and the president and CEO of JFNA, likes to remind us that you don't build a firehouse when your house is on. You build it to be ready for a day you hope will never come. Federation, that translates to our ongoing support for our partners at the Jewish Agency for Israel and the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee, JDC. They are our collective first responders around the globe and here in Israel. Their work in good times and bad is made possible by Federation's annual campaign. And make no mistake, it is a blessing for our people. And just as a reminder, on October 6th, Federations were already in emergency campaign mode, raising over $100 million to help the Jewish community in Ukraine following the Russian invasion. Next slide, please. So, when Hamas brutally attacked Israel on October 7th, that very morning, I began working with the teams at the Jewish Agency and JDC. And we began working with both JFNA's national leadership and consulting with federations to determine the scope and scale of our response. And then we launched twin efforts. The first, to ensure that Israel would have the time and backing to do what needed to be done. We didn't know what that meant exactly, but we knew that it wouldn't take long for Israel's critics to chime in. Working in North America with every single community to reach out to local, state, and national elected officials, business leaders, civic leaders, your friends, your neighbors, Federations rallied. We rallied in support of Israel everywhere, including in your own rally on October 10th in Sandy Springs. And we came together in Washington for the largest Jewish event ever held in our nation's capital. 350,000 people marched together, and another 300,000 tuned in live streaming the event. Alongside this vital community action, Federations launched an emergency fundraising campaign with an audacious goal, $500 million. And thanks to everyone here and tens of thousands of others from across North America, we blew past that goal in just 3 weeks. Next slide, please. In the first week, Federations raised nearly $100 million. Funds went to our trusted partners at the Jewish Agency and JDC, because that allowed us to get immediate cash grants to thousands of terror victims, many of whom had suffered terrible, unthinkable loss and had to flee their homes with nothing, literally in their pajamas, without shoes, without anything. And it helped us to make sure the most vulnerable, elderly, the disabled were being reached and assisted. And we also gave to other organizations that week. You see some of their logos here on the slide, to help the hospitals closest to Gaza that were receiving and treating huge numbers of wounded. I'll never forget, I was at Barzilai Hospital in Ashkelon on October 9th, really not even 48 hours after the attack, and witnessed the incredible team there triaging victims in the ambulance bay while a major rocket attack was underway. What heroes. And we moved fast. We moved fast to make sure that your precious dollars would get out and working in the field as quickly as possible. In many cases, Federations were the first grants received, including for the Hostages and Missing Families Forum, right as they were getting up and running. Next slide, please. Today, Federations are by far the largest source of philanthropy working in Israel, and we are committed to stretching our impact as far as possible. We're maximizing collaboration. We are in contact with all major sources of funding, the government of Israel, planning groups, partners, and of course, all of the local Federation representatives who hold so much knowledge and key relationships. And we are prioritizing sharing information fast and with full transparency, because we know that when we can connect organizations, people, needs, and funders, together we can get so much more done. And we are as data-driven as we possibly can be. We've lifted up existing partnerships and created many new ones. And we are working with extraordinary volunteer and professional leaders across this country, just like your own Eliad Eliyahu Ben Shushan. Next slide, please. There is a national committee leading and guiding this work. It's co-chaired by Jeff Schoenfeld, the former president of UJA Federation of New York, and the person who was, on October 7th, chair of our own Israel and Overseas Committee, and Steve Hoffman, the legendary former executive of the Cleveland Federation, who today serves as the chair of the Mandela Foundation. As you can see here, we established 4 broad categories of work. These lanes have been so helpful in guiding our work and the work of many federations as they direct funds to specific programs and places alongside their support for the work of the Central Committee. Early on, and for many, many months, our main focus was on what we came to call lifeline services. Federations made grants to every hospital in Israel. We made grants for evacuees, for urgent trauma care, for spiritual guidance and pastoral care, honestly, to help people with funerals and to know how to observe the ritual of Shiva. There just wasn't enough help to go around. The deeper we went, the more needs we uncovered, often learning about unexpected ways the war is impacting people's lives. Let's hear about that from Noy. Rich, would you please show our video?
מאז 7 באוקטובר חוויתי הרבה בדידות. היה המון חוסר ודאות ולחץ. בעלי גויס באותו היום, הוא היה בסך הכל 3 סבבים בעזה, גם סבב בצפון. נכנסתי להיריון תוך כדי המלחמה, וזה מה שהיה קצת לא פשוט, כי עברתי את רוב ההיריון לבד, אבל די שמחתי, כי זה הרגיש לי שזה הניצחון שלנו בעצם. אז זה החזיק אותי אופטימית. יש הרבה דברים שמתרחשים שביום יום הם רגילים, אבל בשבילו הם טריגר, כי הוא ראה הרבה זוועות. וגם בגלל שהלחימה עדיין מתנהלת, כל פעם שהוא הולך וחוזר, זה בעצם קוטע לו את הטיפול שלו, וזה מונע ממנו לשקם את עצמו, וזה משפיע על כל הבית. לפני הלידה הכרתי את המילדות חודש לפני. הם ממש הכינו אותי לקראת מה שעומד לבוא. וכל יום שולחות הודעה, ואם אני צריכה עזרה, וזה מנחם, כי באיזשהו מקום אני הרבה לבד, וזה מאוד תומך. הם הגיעו אליי הביתה לפני, וניסו להכיר אותי ואת הצרכים שלי, והכינו אותי ללידה. ובעיקר מה שעזר, שהם דיברו עם עידו, ושאלו אותו לפני כן אם יכול להיות איזה טריגר מסוים שיפריע לו, שבאמת יכולים להשפיע עליו ולגרום לו לצאת מאיזון. זה הכין אותנו בעצם לתהליך הרבה יותר רגוע. גם אחרי הלידה, עכשיו, הן מגיעות אליי ועוזרות לי ונותנות לי ייעוץ על הנקה ועל שינה. הן פשוט מתנה משמיים מקסימות.
Having heard from Noi, you can perhaps imagine how quickly our allocation committee voted to approve this grant. A grant that had been presented to us by the most unlikely of pairings of organizations. The IDF Widows and Orphans, together with Yildot, the umbrella organization of Israel's midwives. But perhaps you can't imagine that we've had to renew and fund this program 4 more times in allocation rounds 12, 22, 26, and 28 as the numbers grew. This grant is helping 30 IDF and security service widows who have already given birth to 28 babies, 27 wives of injured soldiers like Noi and their 23 babies, 2 women orphaned of both parents on October 7th, and 1 woman who was a disabled veteran herself. To me, this is the majesty of Federation, because we do very big things, and we are with people in the moments in which they are facing the greatest challenges of their lives. Next slide, please. I hope you can see from these 2 charts how our grant making has shifted as the situation evolves. We've moved from a primary focus on lifeline services to the other 3 categories. Economic relief and recovery, where we have 3 main efforts. Loans for small and mid-sized businesses. And you should know, and I hope take pride in knowing, that federations represent today the largest source of capital at work in this arena. Federations are making it possible for small and mid-sized businesses to stay afloat. We are providing significant help in the employment sector, particularly for people who, either because they've been dislocated or their lives have changed in other ways, need to be reskilled or upskilled for new jobs, and in agriculture. And I'll come back to agriculture soon. Medical and trauma relief, including, as I mentioned, grants to every hospital in the country, supporting rehabilitative care for all of our many wounded, frontline emergency response capabilities, particularly in advance of the escalation on the Lebanese border, and dozens and dozens of organizations providing mental health services and strengthening Israel's mental health infrastructure and boosting resilience. Community resilience and rebuilding with grants to all impacted cities and regional councils and every community on Israel's northern and southern confrontation lines. Federations have also expanded and leveraged their partnership platforms in Israel, just as you have done, and thanks, Rich, for mentioning that, by adopting Kibbutz Nachal Oz in the south and supporting the evacuees so beautifully during their stay in Kibbutz Mishmar HaEmek in your Yokneam-Megiddo Partnership region. Next slide, please. Let's hear from Anat about the difference Federation has made in her life. Please play the video.
I've been a paramedic for around 12 years. I've never seen what I've seen since the 7th. The types of injuries that were just unimaginable and so brutal. Me being so sensitive has a harsh price on me. It's hard. When I came back from the first recruitment, it's not something you can explain. I'm annoyed with everything. Nothing's happy, nothing's good. I have a hard time sleeping. When I'm on the job, it's something else. You put the uniform on and you feel better. It's when you take the uniform off and when you go home and are expected to go back to the normal world, then the problems start. The retreat for me was a breath of fresh air. After the retreat, I was a lot happier. I was more relaxed. I knew how to pinpoint what is okay for me and what is not. I felt good inside. I had people that understand me, that I can talk to at any time, that have experienced it. I'm thankful for it every day, for the friends, for what I've experienced, for the way I approach life now. I feel like I have a box of tools that is just like ready for me to pull out what I need. I feel like I know what is good for me.
Let's go to our next slide. I hope that you're starting to get a sense of how federations have blanketed this country with love and care. And we are still in it, and we are still at it. This awful war continues, though thankfully quieter now, with ceasefires in place in the north and south. And almost unbelievably, our greatest challenges lie ahead, helping returnees and those still unable to return to their homes, strengthening Israel's north and south frontiers in the rebuilding and recovery process. And we're still learning the scope of damages in the north, physical, economic, and communal. Next slide, please. I told you I'd be coming back to agriculture. So could you please raise your hand if you've ever felt pride in how Israel made the desert bloom? That was accomplished by the farmers of the Western Negev. They were victims of agro-terrorism through a coordinated, calculated, and horrific attack on October 7th. Hamas sought to kill the Zionist dream. They targeted, killed, and kidnapped farmers and agricultural workers. They destroyed buildings and hothouses. They killed farm animals, and they stole or destroyed farm equipment, including all of the tractors and heavy machinery, irrigation systems, and more. This was also a threat to Israel's national food security, leaving us without access to a huge percentage of the fresh produce and much of the country's dairy production, which had been damaged. I am so proud to tell you that Jewish federations are the strategic partner, helping restart agriculture in the region and working with every kibbutz, moshav, and even individual farmers. So when you see that left side of the screen, every time I'm down south and every time I see Federation tractors rolling in the fields, I have a surge of gratitude for what you've made happen. Now with the ceasefire on Israel's northern border, the scope and scale of damage to northern agriculture is becoming clear. This region is home to 72% of the total national grazing land for cattle, sheep, and goats. It holds about 70% of our fruit orchards, apples, and cherries. It is the heart of Israel's egg industry. I took that photo on the right in Margaliot, in a facility that was hit directly by an anti-tank missile on October 20th, 2023, and it has been out of production ever since. This may be another place where our community will opt to partner in Israel's recovery. And even as we look to help building back the education system, to help businesses get back up and running, and to strengthen the resilience of teens and young adults who have been through so much, we are looking at all of this, and I know federations will be there. Next slide, please. I hope that you'll remember Anat and Noy and their stories, and that you know that there are millions of other Israelis who have been helped by you, by Federation. Trust me, you can never overestimate how much it has meant or the size of the impact Federation is having on our wounded country. Israel is rebuilding, and we will rebuild. Thank you for being part of the healing process. Am Israel Chai. Rich, back to you.
Thank you so much, Becky. And I just want to underscore so much of what you said at the end in terms of the ongoing need was very evident to us when we were there last month. And this is an opportunity. We want to open it up for any questions from our participants, for Becky, for myself. Happy to try to answer as best we can. So please just unmute and jump in.
Becky, I have
Go for it.
sure, break the ice. Hi. So I'm curious about how the efforts to create partnerships in the North are starting to take shape. We have a particular relationship with the Megiddo region, Yokneam. So we have a relationship with Nachal through that. So we have kind of a focus area, it sounds like, for the South as a federation. And we visited Shlomi. We have thoughts about partnerships and the ability to contribute to certain communities in the North. But I'm thinking, and wondering about the broader picture of how you start to tackle the Northern partnerships and the Northern rebuild.
Great. I always love a question when I really know the answer. So thank you for starting easy. First of all, just like you have a long-standing partnership together with St. Louis in Yokneam and Megiddo, across Northern Israel, there are existing partnership relationships, most notably in what we call the Galilee Panhandle, which has actually really been slammed terribly throughout this, Kiryat Shmona being the largest city in the region. And that area has for many, many years been paired with our Canadian colleagues and the federations to the north of the border. And they are, in fact, in a breakthrough moment when they have created they've never done this before, but the scope of need is so large that they have created a shared pot of funds of 20 million Canadian dollars that they are going to be deploying in long-term strategic recovery initiatives for the region, at the heart of which I believe, because that's what they tell me, will be strengthening an institution called Tel Hai College, which is being transformed under government decision into the first university in that region. It will become Tel Hai University. And everyone who has lived near or attended a university knows how important universities are in driving regional economies, in drawing into them strong populations as faculty, as students, and even as administrative staff. So Northern New Jersey is partnered with Naharia. There are a bunch of partnerships, and then there are a bunch of communities that are also not yet partnered. So our colleagues at the Jewish Agency, who run the vast majority of this partnership network with us and with federations, just as they divided the communities in the Western Negev and sought to find communities outside of Israel that would partner with them and help them in their recovery through a new initiative called Communities Together. They are currently at work starting to try and capture support for the first of the unpartnered communities in the north. But I'll just say that, of course, it's not enough. It will be hard for us to ever do enough. But I want to stress that every regional authority, and the north has, I think, 94 regional councils and municipalities, unlike the Western Negev, which has just 5. So maybe it's a moment to remind us that long before the war, the North was a much more disparate, a much more challenged region. It was much weaker economically, and it's only gotten worse right now. So we are, as a federated community, have made a grant to all of the Northern Confrontation Line regional councils, municipalities, and the cities and towns that exist within them. So it's not enough, but we're doing a lot, and I hope together we'll be doing more.
I would just add to that, Becky, I think this is where our partnership with Eliad and the work he's doing is so crucial. And Bart, the reason we visited Shlomi is because Shlomi is one of those communities that isn't really paired up and was falling below the radar. And we've identified it as a place where our philanthropy can make a huge difference. As I know, you were with us when we visited, and a community that I think's had over 2,400 rocket attacks over the last year. And, their concerns in some ways are very different than the South. Unlike in the South, where people stayed together when they were displaced, people from Shlomi are in many different places. Many of them have found other jobs, and it was already an economic place on the fringe. And so I think we've identified that as a potential area for us to deepen our partnership. And that's because of the work Eliad is doing with his colleagues in the Jewish Agency.
I have a question. I'm glad to hear that somebody is focusing on Tel Hai College. I visited that with film professionals and students several years back, and everybody was very impressed with what was then a small film program, but with the college overall. But I'm curious what might be happening with Metula, which has had such destruction and is quite close to Tel Hai. Is anybody partnered with Metula?
So Metula is actually, for those of you who don't know, Metula is a community right on the Lebanese border, and it is uniquely surrounded on 3 sides by Lebanon. And so it has been, by the way, not to get too technical, but the challenge for the communities along the northern border has really been primarily RPGs. So Hezbollah fighters will just, open the window, and it's a direct line of sight, no warning time, 8-10 seconds, and a building is down, and a person or a vehicle could be destroyed. And so Metula was evacuated for 15 months. I have become a close WhatsApp buddy with the mayor, who reaches out, and we've been in communication throughout the entire war. It's only about 2,800 people in this village, but many of you may have visited because it has 5 hotels. Every one of them is damaged by rocket fire. It has a beautiful tourism, food, and cultural scene. So right now, there is not yet a partnership directly with Metula, but Wendy, you can bet, because there are very few, as you probably know, partnership regions with nice accommodations and lots of good things to do in addition to the good work of Federation. But the people of Metula are not yet home. It is one of the places that it is not possible for them to return home. I believe 60% of the homes have been damaged or destroyed. So every other house. And except for the mayor and his emergency response squad and a group of reserve soldiers of about 30 who rotated monthly throughout the war, nobody has been living in Metula, and they are working hard to get it back up and running.
Thank you.
Any other questions from our participants?
I just have a quick question, Becky. I believe that we were there about a month ago, 4 weeks ago. I believe since then, many residents of the North have returned home. Is that correct? That
Yes.
were not home when we were there.
Yes, it's absolutely correct. And as in Atlanta, I imagine one of the greatest drivers of housing decisions is if you have school-age children, what are you going to do? So the government knowingly decreed that schools in the North would reopen March 1st in order to trigger the return of people, excuse me, with school-age children. Of course, for these children who may have already moved 2 or 3 times during the course of the war, many families opted to take a financial hit and lose some of the subsidies the government has been providing for housing and otherwise, and not go back so their kids could complete the school year. So while in the Western Negev, it's about 86% of the people have returned, and many of the people who can't come from the hardest hit kibbutzim like Be'eri and Kfar Aza and Nahal Oz, where it's just not possible to go home yet. But I think the date that we should all be watching is probably July 1, because once kids are done with the school year, if enough reconstruction has happened, and if the ceasefire holds, and no matter who you ask, all across the North and all across the South, the number one requirement for people to go home is security and a feeling of security. By the way, the number 2, almost immediately after that, is quality education. So those 2 things are very much a focus of what's happening here. Of course, for federations, while it is true, sadly, in Atlanta and across North America, security is our responsibility. Here in Israel, that is the responsibility of the sovereign government of the Jewish state.
If there are no more questions,
Rich,
Marcia, please.
yeah, I was just wondering, Eliad, nice to see you. Shalom, shalom. Hope your mother's feeling better. Can you share, kind of echo or underscore some of what Becky said to help us bring it home to our donors and how we talk to our community members?
Yeah, so I think that the fact that Becky is with us, and also we can all the time focus on what partnership does all the time. It's like 2 different aspects that are one. The fact that while I was trying to build the visit for the committee members from the Global Committee of the Federation, I understood the big impact of what the JFNA allocated during the war. And that we can say, like, I can feel it and we can see it and we can hear the stories that the Federation has changed and has a great impact everywhere. If it's in hospital, if it's the resilience of the community, if it's supporting the wives, supporting their families everywhere. And there are so many stories and there are so many people that I met personally just to witness what the federations did during the war. Together with this, we have the personal connection of the Federation of Atlanta to what we do in the partnership region. We can support Israel, but we have the special community that we support in the South, with Nahal Oz. And the fact that we have like a strong connection with them, and we are connected not only to the big story, but also to the people. For instance, I will just share it. I didn't even share it with Rich and Susie. Like last week, we went to the Shiva of the family of Tzachi Idan, who was one of the hostages from Nahal Oz, who was murdered. And when we came, I shared with her that I'm from representing Atlanta, and she knew all about you. And she said, please let them know that we love them and we appreciate the support they gave us. And she told me, and I remember that you went with 2 ladies from Nahal Oz, with Miriam and Naomi, and you came and we saw pictures of Tzachi everywhere in Atlanta. And I think that this connection, this is what brings the philanthropy, something more personal, something like a big family that takes care of one another, and meeting the family before, like when we came there in Hanukkah bringing the menorahs that was made by the Women Philanthropy Group in Atlanta and handing them to each family and to each kid. And it's something that created a connection more strong and make all the impact more personal. And I think that by having those two aspects of supporting everywhere in Israel and being connected to so many things that happen in Israel, but also to have the personal touch of Atlanta can grow the strength of the connection between Israel and Atlanta. And I think there are so many examples, although also all the support that you gave to the partnership region for close to 30 years. And now people from the partnership region were the pioneers to help, for instance, the Ethiopian community. The Ethiopian community established a group, a leadership group from the Ethiopian community who helped with the evacuees, Ethiopian evacuees that came from Ibim from the south, lived in Zichron Yaakov for a few weeks. They came and cooked for them Ethiopian food and helped them with accommodation. And I think there are so many stories that Judge shared that the war was an example, and one of the strongest examples of what partnership is all about and what federations is all about for many, many years. And you can really share these narratives with all the people in Atlanta, and or to go to our Facebook group that you can see there's so many personal stories and personal videos just to see the impact of what we will donate and support for many years, and especially this year.
And I just want to reiterate something both that Eliad alluded to and that Becky said at the beginning. A lot of this impact is because of that 30-year partnership. So particularly moving, I think, for our group when we were there last month, were two experiences we had. One with a program that we've been funding for a while called Youth Futures, which is a mentorship program for youth at risk. And while it may not sound like the war would impact it, we heard from both young kids in 5th and 6th grade and their mentors of how that mentorship bond, especially if their father was or mother was called into reserve duty, and how from a mental health and resiliency standpoint, it helped those kids really get through the trauma, especially when the North started to get targeted, and Yokneam and Megiddo were getting targeted by rocket fire on a fairly regular basis from Hezbollah. And then we met another program that we fund, an after-school program that we've been funding for years in the Megiddo region. We met a father and son. The father lost his wife from COVID, has 3 young boys, and this after-school program basically saved this family. And again, the trauma of the war only exacerbated that condition, but the fact that we had been investing in supporting that program for years gave them that strong backbone. So I think that ongoing long-term partnership and the investment in Jewish peoplehood and the people-to-people connections has really been more crucial than ever over the last year and a half. If there aren't any more questions, I want to thank Becky. I know you're going to have to run for another meeting, and thank you for everything you're doing on the ground in Israel. Oh, Mayan, I see you have a quick question. Go ahead.
It's not actually a question. I wanted to say thank you. Like I myself am Israeli. I've been to Israel since the war. I've heard a million stories, and just seeing those, especially those videos, whoever worked on those, good Lord. I'm sitting here, I had to turn my video off because I was bawling. So just thank you, Becky. You're as beautiful as you were the day I met you a while back. And thank you, Rich. I haven't lived in Atlanta in 30 years, and I'm just so proud and happy to be back and seeing this support. It's really quite moving. So just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you for saying that, Mayan. Again, thank you, Becky. Thank you for being our eyes and ears on the ground and helping assess the need and making sure that all of our philanthropy is going to the most important and crucial needs. So thank you. And with that, I want to turn it over to Debbie Kuniansky, the vice chair of our board, who was also the chair of our Israel Emergency Campaign, with some closing remarks.
Thank you, Rich, and thank you, Becky, and thank you, Eliad. I mean, I was in Israel this summer with Jewish Federation of North America. We had a leadership trip there I was as Rich said, the co-chair of the Israel campaign, and it was amazing the work that we're doing. And one thing that became very evident to me was that we really do have people there from our organization who know what's going on, who know the needs, who can help us allocate those dollars in the best possible way. It makes me feel very good about my investment in federations and also my investment in Israel. And we're just so fortunate to have this organization and these professionals who do this amazing work. I mean, when I just saw that video of Anat, the paramedic, and she said it's hard to go back to normal, I thought to myself, there is no normal anymore. And we all feel it as Jews around the world, that the normal isn't the normal. I am very grateful for all of you who supported our Israel emergency campaign. And I just wanted to let you know, even though we don't have a national campaign going on, right here in Atlanta, because of our resources and our partnership there in Israel, we do know there are greater needs now than over the years that we've always been giving to Israel. So we are, through our local partners fund, doing a special Rebuild Israel fund to help us do the work that still needs to happen, because as you saw, it's mental health, it's rebuilding communities, it's the agriculture, it's everything we need to do to help sustain Israel. We are also so fortunate that Lisa and Seth Greenberg here in Atlanta have decided to do a match to help us raise more money for Israel. And dollar for dollar, they are going to match. So I think there's going to be a link or something you're going to get. So if you feel like donating, those dollars will be matched dollar for dollar. And we can thank Lisa and Seth Greenberg for that wonderful donation and challenge that they're doing, because we know the needs are great and we need everyone to step up. So thank you to all of you who are here today. Please share what you learned. This is such important. And one more thing I just want to say, when I was in Israel, literally Israelis that I met, and I've been to Israel many times, it felt different. They know about the Jews in North America. They know about the diaspora, helping to keep them and back them up, because they are our brothers and sisters, and we need Israel and they need us. And this is our time to be there for our brothers and sisters in Israel. Thank you so much for your continued support.
I believe there's a link in the chat. We'll let that sit there for a minute if you want to copy it. And again, thank you to everyone for participating this morning. And Eliad, be safe, be well, and I hope your mom's doing better. I think you need to end it, Sean. Oh, maybe not.